The funny thing about enlightenment is that deep down, everyone is enlightened. So it's possible for literally anyone who is willing to cultivate experiences of enlightenment. For deep down, every person is completely one with God. Every person is completely saturated with the essence of the divine, and in being one with God, it's possible for each of us to experience the qualities of God. These include unconditional love, immense creativity, unconditional happiness, which is my definition for bliss, total peace, complete transparent clarity of mind, and full satisfaction. Now, depending on your level of spiritual awareness, you may have a very different reaction to what I just said. If you are a person who has already had some rich spiritual experiences, then I may be just reciting things that you already know, enhancing what you already know to be true. But on the other hand, if a person's spiritual journey hasn't quite ignited yet, they may contend that what I just previously said is a load of BS. Bologna sandwich, that is. Indeed, if you walk up to most people on the street in the year 2020 and tell them that they are deep down enlightened and one with God, they may have a lot of disagreement to that. It's hard to imagine that if you are one with God and your fundamental essence is enlightenment, how this could be true if you don't feel it. I mean, how could you not experience that which you are? It's my perception, and I think most would agree, that most people don't feel enlightened. How then is it possible to deep down be enlightened and one with God, but to not experience it? The answer to that query lies in the power of the mind. For you see, the human mind is literally so powerful, and the human imagination so incredible, that we can create a picture in our minds of being separate from God and from our nature. We can then maintain this illusion with our persistent beliefs and views to such a degree that we actually block ourselves from the experience of our fundamental nature, enlightenment. We can imagine ourselves to be a person, a body with a personality basically, separate from everyone else, separate from the universe, and separate from God. The human mind is so potent that we can then begin to feel separate from all, just kind of a body floating around in space and time. Now, in many ways, I have personally dissolved this illusion. That gives me the ability to now experience my true nature. I have surrendered my mind to such a degree that I frequently, and very literally, feel enlightened. Like many who have had this experience before me, meditation is the tool that I have most favored for cultivating this experience. You can even choose a different name for that tool if you like, but I have spent literally thousands of hours sitting with my eyes closed and surrendering my mind, my body, my feelings, and my emotions back to God. Saying, "Here God, here Divine Source, you take care of this vessel for me. I don't know if I have ever done a good job of taking care of this thing anyway." And this is an amazing experience. For if you truly surrender to God, you really do feel the qualities of God that I mentioned above. In this recording, I will be elaborating more on what it's like to feel enlightened. I will be speaking on how one incorporates that experience with normal human life. And then I will be sharing a summary of the tremendous journey that it took for me to unfold this experience. Now, let me introduce myself for a moment. My name is Scott, and I'm a spiritual nerd, family man, business owner, and nature lover, currently living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. To make a little money, I work as a spiritual support coach, helping individuals to navigate the spiritual awakening process with as much ease and grace as possible. I also help people to integrate their spiritual values and experience with their everyday lives. What that basically means is that I help people who are newly awakening feel calm and not like they are going crazy. I also help people discover their passions and interests to help them identify their true calling in life. Now, from the outside, in many ways, I am honestly a pretty average 30-year-old man. I do my best to take care of my family, who I love dearly. I eat out, I love tacos, I have a favorite baseball team, and my fiance has to remind me to put the toilet seat down, something that every guy living with a girl knows about. What is very different for me, from most people I suspect, is that while I'm going through my week, I very frequently feel enlightened. In that, I very often feel a deep sense of peace. I get to experience a lot of unconditional happiness or bliss. I frequently feel like I love life, and I have a growing sense that everything is going to turn out very well. I frequently experience my conscious presence both well merged with my physical body and also extending out into my environment. Like, I can literally feel myself beyond my skin. joining with the great peaceful consciousness that creates all worlds. My fear of death is dissolving away, and with that one fear, so many other fears fade away with it. I am feeling this way because I literally experience myself not as a body with a personality, but as a soul, as an infinite, eternal, and deathless awareness. I feel like the body I've been lent is just a vehicle to explore this world. And while I'm exploring this world, I do my very best to follow the very useful guidance of God that arises from within. I notice that when I do that I am naturally happier, and it feels like my life has a lot more meaning. Now, the guidance is not always easy to follow and can lead me into some challenges, but it is, overall, I would say, the way to live. This guidance, which we all have, leads to more happiness, more peace, more confidence, all these things in the long run, as long as we know how to follow it and then listen. Now I will present you with some more details and qualities that come along with feeling enlightened. But first, let me give you a little prerequisite information that will be needed to understand the experience of enlightenment conceptually. Firstly, there is no ultimate experience of enlightenment. Let me say that again. There is no ultimate experience of enlightenment. That is because the divine source we are one with is infinite and unbounded. So just as the God that we are merged with is limitless, there is no end to how enlightened one can feel. There is always more potential for peace. We are always capable of feeling happier, more blissful. We are always capable of being more loving. We can always tap into more intelligence and more creativity. There truly is no limit to the potential of who we are as a soul. So, to say that one is enlightened or unenlightened, it doesn't quite work like that. It's not black or white, it's not yes or no. There's infinite degrees to the experience of enlightenment, to the experience of that which we truly are. When I was newer in my spiritual journey, I did not understand that. I thought that there were enlightened masters, either living or past, and then there were the rest of us, just normal, ordinary folks. I thought that you were either an enlightened soul or not there just yet. I even had times when I had a great experience in meditation or otherwise and thought, wow, I made it. I'm there now. Like, I've arrived. I'm enlightened, I thought. What I came to find is that I would eventually come down from that experience. And then I would go back to just my normal, muggle way of feeling. Not only that, but I would eventually have an experience that far surpassed the one where I thought that I had made it. I have come to find over the years of spiritual practice that no one ever really makes it. We are already one with it. It's simply a matter of if we are allowing ourselves to experience it. And it's also a question of to what degree. To what degree are we willing to dissolve into our divine nature? I would also like to add that no one ever experiences the same internal state from one moment until forever. Life always fluctuates. It is a flux. So, if you go to someone who claims to be an enlightened master, says that they one day became enlightened out of the blue, and has now felt that exact same way ever since, I would advise you to be very cautious. I would personally leave and not go back to that person. That being said, it is certainly possible to feel enlightened. I feel that way very often at this point, both in my meditations and while just going about my normal everyday life. It's also possible to have that experience grow and fluctuate over time. On top of that, it's possible to teach others things that can help them to cultivate the experience of enlightenment. I know that I have had a handful of teachers that I really appreciate and who have really helped me. The commonality of all enlightened experiences is that a person will feel consciously connected to something much greater than their physical bodies. They will feel like this greater something is timeless, and possibly experience either one or many of the qualities of this great presence. The person who has this experience may say that it's hard to put the experience into words, and indeed it can be. For words are limited, they have boundaries, whereas the divine is limitless and boundless. That being said, I try to explain the enlightenment experience here, to the best of my ability. Because in a world with so much static and so much obnoxious noise, and so many people just going about acting fools, I feel like I need to at least try to point to the truth. The enlightenment experience is not one that can be cultivated through understanding alone. It is not something that can be gained through logic. The best way to learn about the enlightenment experience is to have it. And to have it, one will have to surrender logic. One will have to surrender reason. surrender all mind and all thoughts. Now, without further ado, I will describe 9 common qualities of the Enlightenment experience. Number 1. Enhanced sensitivity. As one's spiritual journey unfolds, and enlightenment is experienced more and more, sensitivity will be greatly enhanced. And this is a very important point I'm making, because your sensitivity can become much higher than that of just an average person. A person who feels enlightened will be much more aware of their emotions and sense them more strongly. They will be more in tune with their bodies and all of its needs. Activities, actions, and substances that are good for the body will be greatly enjoyed. Things that are bad for the body will create much more discomfort than usual. Good music will sound better, good friends will be more appreciated. Every sensory experience will be turned up, the more that one feels enlightened. It's almost like the sensitivity dial that seems to be within each of us gets cranked higher and higher, the more that you unfold your divine nature. Number 2, faster emotional resolve. Now, at my level of spiritual awareness, I still experience the full range of human emotion. This may always be true as long as we are human. What has changed, as I've experienced myself becoming more spiritually tuned in, is that I am now more sensitive to my feelings and emotions as my sensitivity has enhanced. In this, happiness can turn to elation, excitement can turn to exuberance, and calm can turn to peaceful surrender. On the flip side, my emotions like anger and disappointment are also more strongly felt. The nice part is, while I can see a lot of value to all the emotions, no matter what they are, disgust, anger, disappointment like I mentioned, I'm now more capable of resolving and moving beyond the more uncomfortable emotions much faster. It's like we all have a state of feeling that we are accustomed to, and we eventually will return to that state from whatever experience moves us away from it. When you are accustomed to peace, happiness, and joy, you will always return to that place. The third quality of enlightened experience that I'm going to mention is enhanced sensitivity to guidance. We all receive guidance from within. How aware we are of this guidance depends on our level of sensitivity to our inner worlds. The more connected you feel to divine intelligence, another word for God, the more sensitive you will feel to the guidance from this source. And this guidance is all good. It's there to help you become happier, more evolved, and to accomplish your authentic and truest desires for your life. When I have had an idea that my guidance wants me to follow, I will notice feelings of excitement and elation in relation to that idea. It's like the guidance is saying, do that, do that. Now, normally when I follow those feelings of excitement and elation, things turn out really well. But then, on the flip side, when I'm thinking of an idea or an opportunity that won't work out so well, I experience contraction and uneasiness before making that choice. The more I evolve, the stronger I feel it. This enhanced sensitivity to guidance can also be called enhanced intuition. Number 4, deep feelings of trust. As you become more enlightened, you experience more trust in God and in the unfolding of the universe. Trust, or we could call it faith, isn't always an easy thing in a human world that can often seem so backwards. But as trust grows, it transcends all of those outer details. I've been starting to get a strong feeling that God is going to move humanity back home to the experience of enlightenment. In this, we will begin to be much better caretakers of ourselves, our planet, and one another. The thing is, even if this didn't happen, you sense that deep down, everything will unfold perfectly and be just fine. And you trust in that. Okay, so now to the fifth quality of realizing yourself to be enlightened, basically. You become a stronger lie detector. Your ability to sense other people's intentions, their state of mind, and the level of truth you are hearing becomes greatly enhanced. In many ways, God and truth, with a capital T, are synonymous. As you become more in tune with God, your ability to sense fact from fiction, lies from truth, and the intentions of others becomes much more clear. Number 6. As you feel yourself becoming more enlightened, more evolved, fears will lessen. All fears essentially arise from the fear of death. Now, this death could be physical, but it could also be from ego death, or death of the imaginary sense of self. So you see, if a person has financial fears, fear of job loss, fear of heights, fear of embarrassment, what have you, these all arise from the concern that one could either die or somehow lose the acceptance of others. In losing the acceptance of others, you see, our ego, that false sense of self we carry in our imagination, really gets challenged. And so that can create a lot of fear, along with that fear of physical death. As you experience more enlightenment, you realize more of your soul. You realize that you are truly an eternal, timeless, and infinite being that can never truly die. You will have to give your body back to the earth one day, yes, but it was only a rental. The more you get in tune with that which is timeless and real, the more your fears will just fade away. Number 7, love, bliss, and happiness, all enhanced. Now, these qualities are the ones that usually first draw people to spirituality and to spiritual practice. They're really nice to experience, of course. I have already touched on these qualities a bit, but you can never enjoy these things too much, so let's go into them a little bit more. Now, truly, if you align with God, all the qualities of God are felt more strongly, like unconditional love, unconditional happiness, and that bliss feeling. The bliss can even become so strong at times that people call it ecstasy, and that can be experienced without the use of the drug ecstasy or any other drugs. And this is just a natural byproduct of realizing yourself to be enlightened. Just as if you jump into a body of water, you will experience the qualities of that water, including the temperature, the texture, the refreshing feeling that you may get as that water interacts with your skin and washes over you. Jumping into pure divine energy is the best experience you can imagine. It's like liquid light flowing through you and around you, comforting you, loving you, soothing your fears and concerns. The perfect temperature and the best of textures. In God's eternal state, God is both unconditionally loving and infinitely happy. God loves you unconditionally, and as enlightenment grows, you get to experience that directly. Alright, so now to the 8th quality of enlightenment. Enhanced creativity and intelligence. God is infinitely intelligent and tremendously creative. You could say that everything in creation that we know of and that we don't know of are all extensions of God, reflections of God in the physical. And being infinitely intelligent, what God creates is always perfect. So it's no surprise that as you tune into God, you also become more loving to self. You can feel that infinite intelligence has created you. And you are exactly as you have been created to be. And there's a lot of intention behind the making of you. Physically, mentally, soulfully, as you tune more into the divine, you can access more intelligence and creativity. And then you can use this intelligence and creativity in your daily life. The 9th quality of the enlightened experience, improved health. God is the greatest of healers. In fact, there is truly only one source of healing, and that is God. Now, medicine, healers, doctors, these things may be needed to help us experience that healing, or to convince us to allow ourselves to receive it. But deep down, there is only one source of healing. The more you get in tune with God, the more that your mind, body, and emotions are capable of healing and rebalancing. The comedian Woody Allen used to say that God does the healing, and the doctor sends the bill. Now, I can also tell you that there are many more symptoms that can occur from becoming consciously aware of your oneness with creation. Another way to say that you are feeling enlightened. But the ones I have covered so far are really some of the major ones. One of the fascinating things about the journey that I went on personally to discover these things and to experience enlightenment more and more is that I never at any point really withdrew from the world. at least not in a major way. There are many people who do indeed believe that the experience of enlightenment is possible, but they imagine that experience to be reserved for people who are either sages or monks, people living in caves or within forest temples far outside of the supposed unenlightened world of shopping, fossil fuels, and Big Mac cheeseburgers. I consider myself a fairly unique individual in this regard, for while I do participate in a lot of surrendering spiritual practices every single day, I also live in the ordinary human world. I have had plenty of normal jobs, such as farming and delivery, where I just did what I could to get by. I have dated around and experienced heartbreak. I've met the love of my life, and her name is Vanessa. Love you, babe. I go to the gym, I go to the grocery store, I meet new people. But while I'm having many of these experiences, I also feel like I'm aware of a field of existence that permeates all matter. This field that I have been calling either God or the divine runs through each of us and loves us purely. To integrate this experience with the normal human world isn't the easiest thing, but I know for sure that it is possible. I should also mention that the journey to how I feel now was not without plenty of challenges. I have become an entirely new person, you see, in about the last 8 years, and I am continuously changing and becoming more of the person that I was born to be, expressing more of the perfectly beautiful soul that God created me to be. This can be very challenging at times, because when you step into being a new person, you relate to people differently. Your desires can change, and even your physical body can go through uncomfortable transitions. Sort of like, you could call them like growing pains from going through spiritual puberty. That being said, I confront these challenges because I have deemed conscious oneness with God to be an experience that I really want and to be the way to live. A person who truly wants to feel enlightened and spread their light to the best of their ability, I would call a spiritual aspirant. A spiritual aspirant yearns for home, to connect with the energy of their true inner home. If you are a person who fits this description, or who is just starting to awaken spiritually, let me tell you that I feel you and I see you. I also really appreciate you. I appreciate you listening to me describing these qualities of the divine, qualities which you are probably really identifying and learning about. And I appreciate you for undertaking your spiritual journey. You are doing it for all of us. For we are all innately and deeply connected in mind and in consciousness. And as you evolve the whole world with you. And nobody, I should say, may ever acknowledge the amazing work that you are doing for everyone. But I really appreciate it. This world is transforming from darkness into light, from violence into peace. I believe this strongly because I can see signs. I see it happening. And in many ways, it's because of you. It is because of you and the work that you are doing within your very own being. Now, I will share with you more of my story and the spiritual journey that I've been on. So, feeling enlightened is no small thing, and it isn't subtle. Anyone who wonders if they are feeling enlightened hasn't felt it just yet. When you feel it, you know. Sometimes I don't feel it really much at all. Sometimes I notice that it's definitely there, this experience of expansiveness, bliss, and witnessing my life unfold. Other times it gets so strong that I feel like I'm inebriated or drunk, just drunk on spirit. Every week I have an experience or two of enlightenment that is really beyond what I'm capable of comfortably just integrating within my daily experience. I do my best at these times to just carry on, but I can't really do my best work or have my best conversations because I feel so high on just whatever it is that we're all made of. These experiences that happen to me once in a while do happen because I'm open to them and am willing to receive them. I want to know what I don't know yet, and I always stay hungry for more God. During the first 20 years of my life, I never felt anything like this. I never felt any of these expansive experiences. I don't remember ever having an experience where I felt expansive beyond my body. What I do remember having was a lot of curiosity about the mysteries of life. I was really curious about the wisdom that was available for each of us to gain. I was often very intrigued by the wise characters in Disney movies such as Rafiki in The Lion King and the wise old willow tree in Pocahontas. I would kind of perk up when these characters spoke their lines. Even when I was just a wee little guy, that was really interesting to me. Other than that, I grew up on a farm in the middle of almost nowhere in southern Minnesota. It was very cold often, winter lasted about 6 months, and we often had to drive 45 minutes just to buy some groceries or to visit the dentist. We were really out there. Not surprisingly, because of this, my family was close. In my childhood, well, it wasn't perfect, but a lot of things really did go well for me. I grew up with a close connection to my grandmother and my younger sister, who were the people I saw when my parents left for work. I spent a lot of time playing outside. My home was surrounded by a beautiful natural forest, and I enjoyed running along the river that went by my house. I liked my young life, but I never learned much about spirituality in the way that I know it now. When I was about 12, I already started to experience some level of emotional suffering. Sometimes it had to do with confusion around growing up, or moving on to middle school, or leaving a group of friends that I was part of, and then not really having anyone to hang out with or relate to. These things could really weigh on my mind, and I would get mildly depressed or stressed out for certain periods. Nowadays, I can see a lot of value to having an experience like this, for it opens up your heart. It awakens your compassion for others. When you've been through something that's hard, then you will have more, compassion and understanding for other people going through hard experiences. And these experiences, they connect you with what's going on in your internal world. But mostly, I gotta say, when I'm having them, and especially at the time, I just thought it was burdensome. I also want to be clear with you. A lot of my early years really did unfold very comfortably, and I had a lot of people who treated me really well. I want to say that and make it clear because I know that not everyone is so fortunate. I also had some talents on the athletic field, in football, and in wrestling, and in the classroom, where I was naturally intrigued and very skilled with science and biology. Going to college at the age of 19 was a big boost for me. I started to not only do a lot of learning and making new friends from different places, even around the world, I also started to really question who I was. Like, deep down, who am I without all of the influences that I've had in my life? This became a question that would cross my mind frequently. I was studying philosophy and having deep conversations with some of my friends and acquaintances, and these were really cherished moments for me. I remember having an experience one day in class, in this college class, I think it was a writing class, where I was really considering all the ways that I had been conditioned by my parents and larger society. I thought about all of the influences and all of the influence that is placed on people from the outside. This triggered for me an awakening. I then stared around at the faces of the other students sitting in class. It felt as though for a short while that everyone just seemed so very dull, and living life just seemed so robotic. And I could see this kind of dullness and robot-likeness on the faces of the other students around me. From that day, I wanted to really start determining for myself who I wanted to be, how I wanted to act, and how I wanted to feel on the inside. It was only a small start, but it did feel very empowering. I would call what I had that day an intellectual awakening, and awakenings like these can eventually lead to a spiritual awakening. The insights that one can manifest within the mind can lead someone to having the more broad spiritual awakening, where a person realizes in a moment, and without a doubt, that they are much more expansive than the body that they have believed themselves to be. As my mind was waking up, I started to study more Eastern philosophy. I listened to the poetic words of gurus and tried to figure out what life was about from this new perspective. Spirituality was something that I just started to dabble with in my spare time for intellectual enjoyment and to possibly reprogram my thinking a little bit. But I didn't dive in deeply, not just yet. Outside of the classroom, I was also living a pretty typical college guy lifestyle at this point. I would go to parties, do some binge drinking, strike out with girls I would meet, play some sports, pretty normal college guy things. I did have another experience of suffering during this time, as a romantic relationship that I was involved in ended suddenly, and it left me grieving its ending. I was sad that I couldn't be with this person any longer, and I didn't express that sadness properly. I just kind of held all those emotions in, and I let them eat away at me. It took me several months to recover from this experience emotionally, and when I finally did, I started managing my emotions a little more wisely. I mention this kind of suffering experience again here because this is often one of the greatest catalysts for change and discovery. It is when we are at our lowest, when we are sad or grieving or feeling down, that we are most open to change, most open to learning a new way of being. After getting over this breakup, life was pretty good for me. I was 21 and I had my whole life ahead of me. I had great friends, great grades, and a great place to live. I was learning and growing, and I was feeling good pretty often. But then tragedy struck, and the most intense experience of suffering that I have had began. In April of 2012, my younger sister, who grew up just 2 years apart from me, ended her life. You see, she had gotten very depressed in her first year of college and decided that she couldn't go on anymore. And I was really heartbroken. I can still feel some of that pain, and I can still feel like I'm working to totally heal this wound. I didn't know how to handle a loss like that. I was counting on having this person be a part of my life for the rest of my days, and I wasn't ready to say goodbye. Hear me when I tell you this, that after this loss, the life that I had been living in many ways up to that point, it just seemed very meaningless. School, friends, and parties, they just didn't have the same feel now. I couldn't connect with my sister in the afterlife, which is what I really would have wanted. And even while she was alive, I felt like I could have enjoyed the time that we had together so much more if I only knew how to really open up and to show people the true me, that genuine, authentic version of myself. This version of me often hid behind a veil, a mask, and a screen of fear from not wanting to be seen. I somehow finished the last week of the spring semester of college that I was in, perhaps because I was in many ways still in denial. But then when the summer rolled around, I started to grieve pretty hard. To offer myself some relief from the pain that I was feeling, I started to turn where many go, but not everyone discovers: the inner sanctuary. I remembered that I had tried a couple of guided visualizations online a couple months prior to this loss and to the summer, and those recordings really seemed to help me relax. So I started listening to them again, and I would be guided into a more relaxed state. In this state, I would feel some relief from the pain that I was feeling, but it would also really help me to get in touch with my emotions, something that can be really healing. After a lot of experience with guided imagery and visualization and doing some journaling, I wanted to learn to meditate without the assistance of any technology. No smartphone, no computer, no headphones, no distractions. Learning to meditate from an experienced teacher is really good for this, but that wasn't available to me. There were no meditation teachers in my small town, and I would know because this is the type of small town where you know everybody. So what I ended up doing was training myself to meditate with a couple of books. One was called The Book of Secrets by Osho, and the other was called Deep Meditation by an author named Yogani. The second of these two, although only being 100 pages, a really small book, it really helped me to get started. It taught mantra meditation, with the intention being to really help its user let go and relax, to tap into a deeper part of one's awareness. It suggested to use AYAM as a mantra, I am, but that didn't really click with me. What did click with me was a quote at the front of the book that said, "Be still and know that I am God." That seemed to really touch me, so I used that as my mantra. I set up a meditation tent in the hundreds of acres of forest that sat beyond my house. I put a nice cushion in there, and every day I went there to meditate and to hopefully do some healing. I would sit for at least 30 minutes and practice my mantra, and doing my best not to get too attached to my thoughts and images that would arise into my awareness. I would repeat my mantra, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Then I would notice myself getting lost in some thoughts. Back to the mantra. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Then I might catch myself reliving a past memory. Maybe it was good, maybe not so good, but just try to focus on the mantra again. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Distracted again. So back to the mantra, you get the idea. I would just sit and relax like this for 30 minutes. And basically, one of either three things would be experienced as I sat in the woods to meditate. Sometimes I would gain a nice sense of peace in the midst of all this chaos that was my life. Sometimes I would run headfirst into my emotional baggage that I had been carrying around all my life, including from the loss that I had just experienced. That would lead me to balling up, lying on my side, and just weeping, crying. And this felt very good, and it felt like a very healthy thing to do. But then the third thing that might happen, another experience could be had. I would recite my mantra, be still and know that I am God. And there would be a lot of silence inside. I would repeat my mantra, repeat it, and this was all there was. And so sometimes I would just let go of the mantra altogether. There's no thoughts or any images arising inside, so why force it? Then, in the midst of that silence, I would have these profound experiences where I'd feel all of my normal emotions and feelings just wash away. My consciousness would feel like it extended far beyond my skin, and the love of God would fill my body. I'd feel like I was just made of light, and all the heaviness that I was experiencing that really I had been experiencing for a decade. If you're living human life, you probably know what I mean. It was like it was just gone, and there was just this lightness and this happiness and this feeling of love inside. I would have a timeless experience that is available to anyone of returning home and being one with the divine. I reveled in these experiences. I went back to meditate every single day, hoping to have one, but it didn't always happen. That being said, I was gentle with myself, and I did accept whatever experience I did have. I looked at every experience as a good one, as one that was helping me. Now, if I did have one of the more amazing experiences during my meditation time, where I would literally experience my enlightened self, the experience would soon fade away after I went back out into the world. I just couldn't maintain that experience during my daily life. The author of Deep Meditation did say that if I kept up with meditating, that my nervous system would eventually be purified so that I could maintain the experience of bliss throughout my whole life. I fantasized about hopefully one day having that experience and being an old enlightened dude. Hopefully sometime in my 50s or 60s, even though I now realize that's not that old. The summer I started meditating was both the hardest and best summer of my life up to that point, for I had gone through a very traumatic experience. But my spirit also used that experience to awaken. As I was awakening spiritually, I also started to have more synchronistic experiences, which you could also define as meaningful coincidences. I met a Qigong master who taught me Tai Chi and other healing arts. I met an old professor who loved spirituality and all things esoteric, and I enjoyed our conversations together. I would also find a lot of the perfect books or videos for myself to either read or watch. Things that really it helped me to keep growing my mind and my awareness. I spent 2 years away from college so that I could really spend time with my family help my dad in his business, I could meditate, and heal my emotions the best that I knew how. After this 2-year period where I was living at home, I then felt called to return back to university. But this time, I went with a lot different route than before. For you see, I could have went back to my old university, South Dakota State, to finish my degree, or I could have taken the excellent grades that I was getting and gotten into a nicer college with a grand reputation. But instead of either of these options, I went to a college where I couldn't originally pronounce the name, called Maharishi University. I chose to go there because it wasn't too far from home, being that it was in Iowa, and I was living in Minnesota, which borders Iowa, but also because there was a lot of meditators on this campus, a spiritual practice that had now become a big part of my life. There was something like 3,000 people who would all meditate in this community. Once you counted the students, faculty, and community members who like to come to the campus to meditate together. At Maharishi University, or MIU for short, I continued my studies, but I also took part in group meditations. I really learned through this practice of group meditation just how connected we all are. For it often seemed like the more people I meditated with, the more powerful of an experience I would have. The more people there were, the more I was capable of having the enlightened experience. I started to feel like on the soul, mental, and emotional levels, like we all overlap. A lot of people who are sensitive to others' feelings can experience the emotions of those around them. These people are normally called empaths. Now, I believe that every person, to one degree or another, is born an empath, with the ability to feel the emotions of those around them. When you are with a group of people and everyone is intending to tune into God, imagine how that feels. Sometimes my meditation group would be a couple of friends. Sometimes it was 20 students, and sometimes it would be almost 1,000 people all together. The bigger the group, the more I often felt like I could just dissolve into the love that creates all worlds. I really enjoyed my time at Maharishi University. I made really good friends who were evolving themselves, took some good classes, graduated with excellent marks, and I expanded spiritually. Now, MIU wasn't perfect by any means. All of us students and teachers, we all had plenty of aspects of ourselves that were needing to heal, and we were all wanting to change. And plenty of people arrived pretty weathered. But I did really enjoy it there, and got to glimpse what life could be like if everyone on this planet began opening up to God. When this happens, there is definitely some magic in the air, no doubt about it. My favorite class during my first semester was taught by a man who held a PhD in neuroscience. He was a little middle-aged guy with a big bald head, and most of us in the class believed that he was probably a genius. He had been doing research on brain changes during enlightened experiences for like 30 years by the time we met. He had been studying the brains of avid meditators through EEG equipment and was studying the brains of people during meditation. He also studied the brain functioning of people who reported having the same experiences of enlightenment outside of meditation that I started this recording with. It was his contention that if a person is able to have enlightenment experiences during meditation, that they would eventually begin through repetition to have these experiences outside of meditation while just going about their day. He said that meditation could greatly enhance one's brain functioning and also create dramatic changes in the brain. Then the enlightenment experience could be maintained no matter what a person was doing or what was happening in one's environment. This made me pretty excited. I was already having these really good experiences in meditation where I would feel my enlightened self, but the experience would mostly fade away after I returned to the world. My physiology, I learned, just couldn't maintain that functioning. I again fantasized about one day being an old enlightened dude. Little did I realize that one day would begin arriving much faster than I expected. About a month after I took this class, I was driving around on my way to pick up some supplies from Walmart. Then all of a sudden in my body, I suddenly had kind of this tingly feeling. Now, I had experienced this sensation before. I knew what it was. It would happen when I was about to transcend my mind during meditation and go into bliss. a few moments later, that's what did happen. As I was driving, it felt like my imaginary boundaries dissolved, and I could feel myself both inside of my body and surrounding my body simultaneously. A natural and unconditional happiness arose within me. Now, I was used to throughout my life just having thoughts and emotions as being what constituted my internal and active inner world. I would think a thought and have an emotion, think a thought, then there would be an emotion that, coupled with that thought. That's just the situation that I was accustomed to internally. I imagine that's how it is for most people. But now, all of a sudden, along with the thoughts that I was thinking, there was this deep sense of peace and a delightful feeling of bliss, along with this expansiveness that I had only previously experienced during meditating. As I continued on, I got to experience what it is like to feel really free while going about one's day. That first experience of enlightened activity lasted about 1 hour, and I had to chuckle at the fact that most of it occurred in the great land of Walmart. Not exactly what I would have imagined. Walmart, the place where people used to go shopping before Amazon began. That was January of 2015, and throughout that year, I had about a dozen more experiences like this one. I would transcend the mind and body and experience the peace that surpasseth all understanding for about an hour or two while I was just moving about and going throughout my day. As time went on, I just kept up with my spiritual practice, meditation, some qigong, tried to take really good care of my body and treat it like it's a temple for God, do my best to be aware of my thinking and think good thoughts. And with that routine of self-care and spiritual practice, I just kept on having more of these experiences. The next year, I even had a couple of more powerful experiences where I would literally experience other people as an expression of my own consciousness and feel tremendously compassionate for them. It's like in the first transcendent experiences that I started to have while going throughout my day, I was living life through the eyes of my soul, and as such, feeling my fears and worries just wash away as I became in tune with the timeless and deathless presence that is me. But in this higher level of experience that I could have outside of meditation, it was more like I was experiencing all of life through the eyes of God, seeing the true oneness of all existence. Now, I know just how grandiose that sounds, and I have still only had that higher experience outside of meditation a handful of times since then. But think about it, if experiencing life through the eyes of God doesn't sound grand, then what does? I would also like to again highlight that there are an infinite degree of enlightenment experiences that one can have. There's just no end to the infinity of the Creator, whom we are one with. Now, one of the amazing things is that two people who have each had an enlightenment experience can describe it in a very similar way. Because the field of the divine, this infinity I'm talking about, it's just there. It's there no matter if there's humans on the earth or not. And each of these two people will simply be tapping into the exact same field that saturates and permeates each of us, although it seems like most people don't realize it yet. Over the last 5 years, the enlightenment experience has simply grown in frequency, duration, and intensity for me. I keep doing my spiritual practices and taking good care of myself, doing my spiritual practices and going throughout my day. Now, where I used to have many enlightened experiences during my daily meditation practice, and maybe one a month for an hour outside of meditation, it is now how I spend much of my time. Sometimes I experience almost a full day in this state. About half my week at this point is spent in the midst of a divine happiness, one that makes me feel expanded beyond the small outline of my skin. With that, my commitment to cultivating this experience more and more has really grown stronger. It's not always easy to integrate this experience with the human world that can often seem kind of confusing and uncertain, but I'm up to this challenge. If you believe the information that I've shared in this video and the story I've shared, I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you. Maybe this video has just helped to encourage what you already know to be true, as you awaken spiritually along with me. But if you don't believe the things that I have shared, it doesn't mean that what I am saying is any less true. And I am not a person who likes to BS. Not anymore. It's time for us all to be more honest now. I have one more experience that I would like to share with you. While I feel like I have gotten pretty proficient in the realm of spiritual advancement, I still have a lot of uncertainty, and honestly, I lack a little of ability in the world of jobs and careers. A lot of my focus has been on consciously merging with God and healing my emotions over these last several years. So I'm just beginning to grow a career for myself. A lot of potential employers have quite honestly considered me to be a weirdo. And when I consider the name of my school, the different places I have lived, including Iowa, Minnesota, Sedona, and the fact that the word consciousness appears on my resume a couple of times, I can kind of see what they are feeling from their perspective. So for work during the last 3 years, I've just been doing mostly whatever I could to get by, working with my hands, helping with lawn care, honestly, doing some delivery. Then in the summer of 2019, I saw some job openings for the career of health coaching. I researched what that was and what this is, and it seemed to really jive with me. Basically, as a health coach, you listen to people voice their health concerns and frustrations, sort of like a health counselor, but you also help them to formulate and stick to some new healthy habits so that they can feel more well. I know I've formulated a lot of different little habits in my life that have really helped me to feel better in the long run. I really liked the science of health and have a degree in physiology, so I started training to become a health coach. By the following summer, my training was going really well, so I quit my day job to finish this training and hopefully get a nice little business going for myself. I completed my training, decided to specialize in the area of stress management at the time, found some clients to work with, and I even wrote a book titled How to Manage Stress. In my book, I shared a lot of my favorite techniques and tips for stress management, many of which have also helped me to feel my connection to the divine more strongly. But in the book, I didn't really reveal that last part, the divine part. I kept it pretty safe, and I didn't really share more of my expansive experiences. Then there was this one day, while I was writing my book, How to Manage Stress, and I just hit a roadblock. I was feeling pretty frustrated. I wasn't feeling especially good, let alone divine that day, and I wasn't accomplishing a lot. So I paused my work, and I went out into a beautiful forest outside of where I now live in Albuquerque, so that I could just kind of relax and just let go of my frustrations and calm my mind. I walked a little, sat on a log, meditated a little, and then I started to walk about more. As I was walking, the enlightenment experience hit me pretty hard. I felt all of that frustration that I was feeling just wash away. My awareness merged with the forest. It felt like I was walking through a paradise, honestly. It felt like everything had kind of a soft glow to it. And the same stuff that was inside of my body was outside of my body and was just permeating all of the forest, the beautiful leaves, the flowers, the plants, the river, the mountains, everything. I started to really consider the fact that I had now had this experience hundreds of times and wondered what it would be like to share what I was feeling with people through my words and through my stories. I considered possibly writing another book after How to Manage Stress about my experiences chillin' and being one with God. Now, so many dreams and ideas get squashed in the early phases when they are just little seeds that haven't even sprouted yet. And this is often because of fear. As I was starting to think about creating this new book about enlightened experiences, I started thinking to myself, I don't have the time or money to write another book. People aren't ready for a book like that. I can't be that open with how I express myself and what I share. All kinds of thoughts like that. But the idea, like a small seed, was in the soil of my mind. And there it grew. It grew and it grew, like a patch of wildflowers that are untamable. It grew. I would wake up in the night and notice my subconscious mind piecing this book together while I slept. I would wake up in the morning and write the book in my head for an hour before my little baby girl and fiancé would get up for the day. When I was feeling spiritually high, I started creating eloquent content for this book in my mind. The source within me is strongly urging me to write this book about my spiritual experiences, and I am currently in the process of doing just that. The book that I am writing, and this video that you are now listening to, are my best efforts to share my experiences communing with the divine, to share my experiences realizing the immensity of the love that God has for each of us, and the fact that we are all one, and even though we are all unique, all people are equal and loved unconditionally by the Creator. I know this not as an idea, but as a direct experience. Now, the enlightened experience is still ripening for me, but these experiences are coming along very strongly. And I do feel strongly like I will just develop this experience more and more until it is always present with me. And I deem this experience to be very important to share. If you agree, please share this video with those who you know will appreciate it. I really want to get this message out to people that there is a different way to live. It is possible to live with peace instead of confusion. It is possible to live with joy rather than fear. It is possible to live, work, eat, play, and laugh, all while feeling enlightened. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. I am feeling this goodness more and more, and I only intend to enhance this experience until no thoughts contradictory to God remain within me, until I remain in this state forevermore. If you have listened this far, I would like to thank you. You are a person who probably brings a lot of aid to this world, and you may not realize that yet, just how valuable and important you really are to this world. Thank you.